Hey everyone, Alex here with another image review. 47 images this week, which sounds like a lot, but actually there's a lot of similars and topsides because this week it's actually just a collection of pictures that have been processed for needs rather than because I'm working through some particular catalogue. So these relate to sort of articles I've been doing or pictures that I've had to deliver for other reasons. So it's kind of a mixed bag. There's a lot of pictures of the research that the Maldives Underwater Initiative do in the Maldives, and so there's quite a lot of people pictures, so I'll whiz through those. But there's a few underwater pictures in this one as well, and they start off with some Silverside images that are older shots from, this first one's 2008, 2013, 2017 pictures, which I've reprocessed, or these are pictures that I initially hadn't processed from the shoots, and I've processed some different shots out, really because I was writing a new article on Silversides, and I didn't want to only rely on kind of the shots I'd processed before, kind of my classic shots. I thought I'd process some different frames out to help illustrate that article, to give the editor more choice. They may end up choosing all the classic ones again, but it was a good excuse to process out another 5 or 6 images. One thing that was interesting is that, Silverside pictures, there's lots of stuff in the frame. You don't tend to get a lot of backscatter visible in the shots. But one thing is shots like this with very full-on content where there's stuff right through the frame. These are the types of shots that Backscatter Exterminator really struggles with. So Backscatter Exterminator is fantastic software, as many of you know. I would use it extensively. But these types of shots, actually, you can't really use it on it. It can't really tell the Silversides from the backscatter, so it is an area that really struggles as a theme. Any picture that's I find full of fish particularly, it is really the only area that I've found it really struggles. So let's get going anyway. First up, there's these shots from Cayman Islands. This is a backlit shot. You can see my off-camera strobe down the bottom here. I'll click in. You can read the name on the Subtronic of a blackjack and some Silversides behind it. I just processed this picture out because I felt it was just a little bit different from the normal shots, and I felt that one of the things when you do an article on a very specific thing like Silversides is the shots are quite samey. So any shot that adds some variety visually to the portfolio is going to really help the magazine out. They may not use it big, but they'll use it in terms of the pacing, so they can kind of go with the classic crowd pleaser, but then rather than just going to the same shot again, but with a different version of it, or different type of shot in that area, they can put a different picture in. This is more in the kind of classic crowd pleaser, Silversides everywhere, tarpon bursting through. This is just one I hadn't processed before, so chose to process this one out just to have something a little bit different or something new for them to look at. These are old shots. So this first one is D2X, Nikon D2X, crop sensor camera shot with Tokina 1017. This one is with the Nikon D4, and I think it says 16mm, so it's a Nikon 16mm fisheye. I don't think that's an RS conversion because the different RS conversions I've had down the years report in different ways. But I think that is actually the 16mm. Anyway, I kind of remember diving with a big dome on those dives. Even though it was 12, 13 years ago. Next up is, I think when I was looking at the Silverside shots, I spotted this eagle ray, and I thought I'd process it out because he had a nice smile. There we go. That's why he got processed out. No other reason than that. Eagle ray shots, certainly the underneath shots of this is a male here. They're all quite samey. And that's shot with a 1635, which is quite an unusual lens for me to use. And it's actually at the 16 end, so it must have been quite a close pass, although it looks like it's been cropped a little bit, so maybe it was cropped a bit. How many pixels is it? 6,500. So I must have run this through super resolution, and that's maybe why I reprocessed it, is that probably I shot it, it wasn't that big in the frame, and it was cropped, and on the D4, which is only 16 megapixel, I felt the file wasn't big enough, and that's obviously been run through some sort of software up-res at some point to get the file size. Let's have a quick look at the quality on it. It looks pretty good. That's 100. Is it 100%? I can't read the percentages on my screen. You can read them, but they're hidden behind behind the little black bit at the top of my Mac screen, which has got the camera in. Right. more Silversides. I did want some different predator shots for the article. So this is barjacks and a blackjack coming through the schools. So just to help tell the story of the article, just to vary it from the tarpon images, this is just one with some different jacks in. When looking through that Cayman folder, I obviously bumped into this funny shot of a pike blenny attacking my finger. So it's a nice reminder of how small pike blennies are. But I just, it's not an artistically interesting shot. I understand why I never processed it at the time. But it made me laugh when I ran through them. So I quickly processed that pike blenny out. A picture of John Barron, who many of you know for the underwater accessories he now makes. And we forced him into do some modelling on this day. He actually had this very cool red mask. That was his own mask. And it looked so good with the suit. And he had this red... I know the mask was borrowed, but he had this red regulator. And just this whole look was... And he had red bits on his BC at the time. And... I'm sure John would say this straight away himself, but he's also got a black beard at this time, where it's rather more salt and pepper these days, should we say, John, in the beard area. But yeah, nice little picture of John just swimming through the Silversides. We did this as a setup for the group, so I only just took a couple of shots of him before kind of passing his modelling over to the group for people to shoot him coming through the Silverside. So I didn't get actually a very nice circle on the split here. But anyway, I thought I wanted a new diver shot for the article, although they'll probably end up using one of the older ones. And then another shot of a tarpon coming through the school. I think I've already processed one of this same pass. And this one here, the composition wasn't quite as nice. But I realised that actually if I cropped it a bit more, if I cropped it to 4:3, which is actually the page shape of American magazines, that actually I quite like this composition, and it might well suit them quite well as a full page image for the magazine. So that's why I processed that one out. And those are sort of things that you're thinking about as a photographer selling their work, in terms of choosing which pictures to process. It isn't just this is the one I like the most, or this is the one that will do best in the contest. It's thinking about images that are going to work in a magazine's layout. Right, we now head to the Maldives, and there's a lot of pictures now processed, which I'll run through relatively quickly, shot for the guys of MUI, Maldives Underwater Initiative, in the Lamu Atoll, and the work they do. So this is just some beach surveys to look at beach erosion, how the sand levels go up and down with the different erosion. Particularly in the Maldives, the islands tend to change shape in the two different monsoon seasons as the wind and waves and current come from different directions. So the islands grow and shrink through the year on different sides, and so they use this surveying equipment to record that. And these are just a couple of shots of that. I just blow them up big, but they're nothing more than illustrative shots. But they have to be taken, and obviously I wanted to get that Maldives feel into them. I think it's always quite fun. The incongruity of having scientists working in tropical locations always looks good. Some pictures of these are yellow mangroves and red mangroves, trees growing the same little tree. Just a few shots of that. I just processed these out for them based on their wish list, and then some more photos of some of their staff working. This is Pip on the right, who's their head scientist, or head scientist there, leading a seagrass survey, and you can see the quadrat there, and the line that they put out to make a transect for doing their surveys. Photographing the quadrats and also counting blades and measuring blade length of the seagrass is the work they do. So these are just some illustrative photos for that. They do produce quite a lot of posters and magazine features about these things. So pictures with lots of spacing like this are very useful for that. A picture like this is obviously not very exciting, but you imagine this across 2 pages of a magazine. You might have text down one side. You could even have some inlay photos on the bottom, and suddenly all the space on this becomes very, very usable in a magazine layout format or on a poster format. Showing them doing the work, but sort of utilizing that negative space in the magazine for other content. These are just some more environmental shots, obviously collecting old fishing line off the reef. There's lots of monofilament there, some pretty thick meaty stuff there as well, which is not nice to see. These are ropes for doing transects on coral reefs, and the little orange tags are every metre along them, so they can measure a transect. And this is when doing coral surveys or fish surveys, you tend to put a transect down, and then you swim down the reef on that survey line, counting what you see. So it gives you some sort of repeatable data. You can't count all the fish on the whole reef. So instead you measure out a section of the reef, maybe 50 meters or so, swim down that 50 meters and count all of that particular coral or all of that particular fish. And then you can compare that between coral reefs, and you can compare that on the same reef over time, and hopefully begin to see some trends, some changes, how things are going. These are some pictures of some of the staff. This day it was really surgy. It was a perfectly good day for doing science, but it was an absolutely rubbish day for taking photos of them doing the science, and I was not happy at all. So I just took a few snaps, and they were completely useless because they were an absolute fog of particles in the water. It was just so much sand stirred up. The visibility was good, but it was just full of sand. And I ran this through Backscatter Exterminator, and in one click it turned a complete junk picture into basically this, which is not an amazing photo, but very usable. So it's quite interesting to comment on that, and how well it works with something like this, the software, compared to how poorly it would work on those, say, Silverside shots. These are some more. This is Shaha on the left there, who's another senior scientist in the Maldives doing these surveys. This is just some shells collected with beach combing. They're just on the wooden step on the beach, and they obviously will return back to the beach after the photo. They're obviously not alive anymore, but it's they're important. They can be important homes for hermit crabs and things like that. So it's nice to see the shells, nice to collect them, but also good to return them afterwards. More fish surveying. You can see here. What fish have we got in here? Parrotfish survey. Look at that. Just what I like to see. I can see a bicolour parrotfish up the top there. Very nice to see. You can see I don't know if I can click any more in. There we go. You can see the unusual juvenile and the big of the bicolour parrotfish here. Well, it's actually got the name as well at the top. So there. And then the dusky parrotfish down there. Right. Let's keep going on. Right. Fish shot. Just a Moorish idol being cleaned by Cleaner Wrasse. Moorish idol, a bit like parrotfish, is one of those fish I think are very under-photographed. And this is not a very good photo of one, but they are always on my to-do list to shoot. Shot with the Tamron 90, that one. Then some more shots of some more of the Marine staff doing their surveys. This was Abby. Abby was really good at modelling, actually, to the point that it made doing the shots quite difficult because she was always so well posed. It made everyone else look kind of a little bit awkward. But it made doing these photos nice and easy. It wasn't the best conditions. I just wanted to take a few new shots. I've done shots of them doing the surveys before there, but as the staff change over, it's always good to have a few more up-to-date shots, and it gives them some variation as well when they're laying stuff out to show that it's really a team effort. A collared butterfly fish, very pretty little butterfly fish. Just a little portrait of one. It had some glassfish behind, which are what's created those bokeh bubbles behind it. Just shot with a 90mm again. Shot with a reasonably open aperture f5.6 to give that separation on the reef. Just a little fish portrait, but it's a cool little fish. Nice to see. Right, some topside shots of some more of the girls going in and doing their surveys. I'll just whiz through those so you don't need to see them, but they are very useful. All I would point out with these is there's a couple which are quite full in the frame, but most of these I'm shooting with lots of negative space with the intention that that can be filled with text or other pictures or that sort of thing when these images are used. Right, now on to the coral fragmentation tank. So there's been lots of coral growing and fragmentation using coral trees underwater. The problem with coral trees, as people particularly found out in the Caribbean last year, is that they're exposed to the same environmental conditions as the coral. So if you have a big bleaching event, it doesn't just kill the reefs, it also kills your propagation corals, which is obviously very problematic. So these on-land coral propagation systems are becoming more popular because they allow the scientists to use controlled water temperatures so that they can grow the corals in optimum conditions, and if they do have a bleaching event, at least the corals in their propagator are safe from it, and they can propagate lots of species. So this coral propagator you can see is not just propagating the standard branching, fast-growing acropora corals that you tend to see on coral trees, but they're growing lots of different coral species within there. And these are just a series of shots done around the propagator. There wasn't that much flexibility photographically. It's not very big. You can't really get much of a camera in there, but I wanted to do some underwater shots just to make it look visually interesting. This is a split level shot done with the Nikonos RS50mm. It was the only lens that's small enough to get in there. And it's not perfect above the surface, but it's all right. I'll zoom in. It's not completely in focus, but I think in terms of telling the story, it's close enough, and that's just the limitation of the lens. So two of those got in by mistake. Oh yeah, one of those I just reprocessed a little bit to sharpen it up, and then some completely topside. You can see how small the with Summer cleaning the corals there, you can see how small the tanks are. And yeah, just cleaning the algae off there with a toothbrush. And this is a shot of one of the plugs that they attach the corals onto for this system. Right, back underwater again. So last couple of pictures now. One of my favourite fish that I've very rarely photographed because it's such a shallow water specialist. And this shot I like because I've got two of them in there, is the Picasso triggerfish. It's not technically a very good shot. It's got some flaws to it, but I do like this species, and I think it's important to have records of shots like this because they're quite an iconic underwater species. You see them used a lot in montages and in art and things like that in the underwater world, and so it's good to have one of those. Also in Lamu, these are from this year, these shots. This is one of the house reef. There's quite a lot of these leaf scorpion fish on the house reef, but this was the prettiest one. Lovely yellow colour, individual, and it hangs around on this particular coral bommy because that bommy attracts a big school of glassy cardinal fish, and that's a good food supply. So I managed to work the cardinal fish into the picture here, shooting them purposely out of focus so that they create these interesting blobs. You can begin, I think, with this one at the top here to kind of see there's a bit of a fish there. But they're kind of a little bit aesthetic and also a little bit storytelling. And I used a very open aperture of f5 to blur that background. I had to go all the way down to ISO 64 to stop the ambient light overwhelming things at the same time. And then the final photo was processed because I needed a cover shot for one of the forthcoming, well, when I record this, but probably be out by the time I put this online. One of the forthcoming episodes of the Underwater Photography Show. So I'm very confident that nobody watches this channel who doesn't watch the Underwater Photography Show, because this channel is geeky content as a chance for me to talk about some of my recent images, whereas the Underwater Photography Show really tries to talk about important issues and give good advice in the world of underwater photography. Anyway, I processed this picture out. It's a very old picture. We did a new episode on mobile phone use underwater, and this is a picture from 11 years ago of Jenny Stock with a phone underwater. So I thought it was quite a fun one to use as the cover shot for that episode, taken in Tubataha in the Philippines. Right, I hope that was an interesting run through. As I said, it's not the most exciting week here for images, but good to get those ones covered. So thanks for watching. I'll be back again soon.